But let's start it off with the Open at Belton.
How about it?
This tournament kind of transported us back a little bit.
It really did.
It took us back in time to yet another classic Ricky and Paul battle. Something that, not that we haven't seen in a while, but we used to see a lot more frequently than we see right now.
Pretty much every event.
Yeah, it basically came down to the final 2 holes. Ricky had to shoot a pretty ridiculous 16 under par out there to win by 2 strokes over Paul. But one thing that was interesting here is Paul and Ricky ended up over 10 strokes clear of the field. I believe Paul was 11, Ricky was 13 clear of third. And another interesting fact, neither of them had a bogey out there all tournament. The course did play pretty soft. The course's par was pretty soft, but still pretty crazy.
That's really crazy.
To go 6 rounds combined, so 3 and 3, no bogeys at all.
Yeah.
So now, with this Ricky and Paul rivalry, obviously it used to be a bigger thing. Nowadays, there's a lot more talent that kind of seeps in between them. But Ricky recently did an interview with another podcast here on the Foundation Podcast Network, the Nick and Matt Show, which if you haven't listened to the full episode, I highly recommend you go do that and listen to the interview with Rick. But he said in there, obviously we're trying to beat the field, but most of the time it turns into a me versus Paul battle. When me or Paul are 1 stroke off the lead and 6 strokes ahead of third, good luck catching us. If he's playing at a high level and I'm playing at a high level, we're going to be right there. And it doesn't matter who's playing in the tournament. So, first talking point from the MPO side, Open at Belton, is that really still the case? If Ricky and Paul both show up, both play great golf, is anyone able to be in contention with them?
You know, I'd like to argue that it is still the case, and this is why. I do think that there are more players out there that are just about as talented, and like a guy like Eagle McMahon or Calvin Heimberg. Calvin's close.
Calvin was at this event. Eagle's not.
I'm saying Calvin is close to bridging that gap between them, because I think guys like Eagle is like one of the better examples, who are like, I think as arm talented as those 2 players. He is capable of popping off for those like 15, 16 under rounds, but he is more likely to do that like once during a tournament or maybe twice. Whereas Paul and Ricky, if their game is on, they can do it 3 times in a row, no problem. It's just not even an issue. And those are the two guys that we've really seen that have been the ones who can do that. Calvin, I think, is close to that. I think Calvin is the other guy I've seen that's been like super consistent. But I agree, like if Ricky and Paul are playing their best golf, nobody's beating them. No way.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I think that we're still in that era where if they show up and play their best golf, if they are both at a tournament and one of them is playing their best golf, they won that event. Whoever played their best golf out of those 2. But I will say that I think why we're not going to see, and we haven't seen, the similar dominance is it requires their best golf now.
Right.
If you look back at 2015, 2016, 2017, even 2014, all the way back to like 2013 or 2012 when it first kind of started. But 2014 to, I would say, like 2018, 2019 is like the key Ricky versus Paul. I don't think it required their absolute best every weekend for them to be 1 and 2.
Good point.
I think that especially like 2015 Paul, there's no way that he played at his absolute best all those wins.
Yeah.
He was just that much better than the field. To where he didn't, when Paul had his absolute dominant season in 2015, he didn't have to play his absolute best.
Yeah.
He was just that good. And then similar things with Ricky in like 2016, 2017. You know, that's when I think the Ricky and Paul battle really got heated. I think might have been 2016, one of those 2 years. If they were both in an event, one of them won.
Yeah.
Every time. I think it was a similar thing that we saw there, where Ricky didn't have to play his best golf to win. Nowadays, I think where it's shifted is they do have to play their best golf. I agree with what he's saying. If they both show up and they both play pretty much their best golf, which this weekend they both played pretty freaking good. Like it wasn't like Ricky beat Paul because Paul didn't play good. Paul shot a 13 down the final round.
Yeah,
it required a ridiculous round out of Ricky to beat him. Which I think that's kind of how, if you're Ricky or Paul, that's the version of the other person you want to beat.
Right.
You want to beat them at their best.
Right.
But it requires them to be at their best, I think, to separate them from the field. If they play decent golf or good golf, they're not going to win. That's where you might see them even slipping down into like 8th, 9th place this year.
Yeah,
which is kind of crazy. So I think we're going to see a little bit more parity, but I do agree that if they both show up, they could still be dominant.
The field has gotten there to the point where if they slip up a little bit, like they're going to get caught, like you said. But yeah, it's getting there, but it's just the consistency that with what they can do. Like when you see a guy like go off for, when the first round goes by and I see a hot round from somebody, unless it's Paul or Ricky, I'm not considering them. Here they go. Like they're off the races. They're going to win. Like I'm not even thinking about them in that last round yet, because I know that they might follow it up with something 10 strokes.
Well, that's
worse.
the thing too, is like if you're looking at, we can go back to Waco, right? If you're looking at Waco and you saw Nico, Cale, Bradley, Williams up there, I vividly remember saying in the podcast, like, well, Ricky's not out of this. He's 4 strokes back. Ricky and Paul are pretty much the only players that I'm looking at, and if I see them within 5 strokes going to the final round, you don't count them out. Mm-hmm. If you see some other players, it depends on who they're within 5 strokes of. But there's several other players that if they're within 5 strokes, it's going to take a pretty big feat. Yeah. Ricky and Paul have done it so much that if they're within striking distance, they're going to strike.
I think with the hot round thing too, it comes down to like literally composure. Mm-hmm. Some guys, pop off 14 under, they're in the lead. And even if they're a slightly bigger name player, they're like, oh my gosh, like I went hot, I'm on the lead card, like I did it. And then it kind of, it puts some pressure on you. You're going to be filmed the next day on that feature card, especially if you're not somebody who's a mainstay or on the feature cards. It'll really put the pressure on you. Whereas Paul and Ricky, they expect that from themselves. So when that happens,
they're filmed pretty much every round they ever play.
Right. So when that happens, that was just them executing their game plan. It wasn't a surprise. Yeah. So I think composure is a big part of that.
Now, one thing that I wanted to ask as well is, I actually had it formulated and just completely forgot it, so I'm gonna go with a different question because I didn't write this question down. But if you're going into a tournament and you have Paul and Ricky, okay, if you're able to have them both be completely on, they're both on fire, who's taking it down?
I think that's almost like one of those scenarios where you've got 2 basketball teams that are just on money, and it's like last one with the ball wins. It's kind of that thing. Like somebody's going to get a break the other one doesn't get, and that's kind of just going to be what determines it. Like neither one's really going to make a big mistake. It's just going to kind of be a coin toss. I don't think it's like, I think when they're both at their very best, both of them play pretty much perfect golf. And when there's perfect golf, the only thing that's going to change that is that little wind gust or that tiny branch or that chain
the
out.
break they get.
So, because when they're so close to each other, you can look back at their rounds and find the 2 strokes in a chain out or something. Like, there's no real way to decide that. They're too close.